So let's get into the background of the area before we get into the events themselves, and that is the city of Moscow, northern Idaho, right along the border with the state of Washington. It's just south of Coeur d'Alene, which is, a place we've been to for a story before, and Moscow is quite a safe, it's a college town and it's very safe. The last murder to occur there occurred in 2015, so 7 years ago. And then this story happened. Moscow is known as the heart of the arts due to the various festivals that take place there throughout the year, no doubt championed also by the University of Idaho, situated on the west side of town. The population of Moscow is rather small, only 25,000 people. Those fine folk are joined by 10,000 students who attend the University of Idaho, the largest university in this state, making Moscow a college town, home of the Vandals. And also home to 4 students who were attending the University of Idaho in November 2022. Madison Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. Maddie Mogan was 21 years of age, from Coeur d'Alene. She was born in May 2001 in Eugene, Oregon. Growing up in Idaho, she was known as very funny, a hard worker, and was excited to be attending the University of Idaho. There she would make the Dean's List, which is, getting academically recognized by the big dogs. She would make the Dean's List every semester. She had been dating a fellow student named Jake for almost a year as 2022 closed out, and she was excited to be soon graduating with her degree in marketing. Kaylee Goncalves was also 21 years of age, from Rathdrum, Idaho. Really, again, part of the greater Coeur d'Alene area. She was born in Concord, California, the middle of 5 children. Much like Madison, her family moved to Idaho when she was still quite young, and it was actually in middle school that her and Madison began a lifelong friendship. They were inseparable even as they both transitioned to university life, going to the same university together and living in the same house. She was athletic, she was social, and she loved adventure. She was studying to become an elementary school teacher. Ethan Chapin was 20 years of age, of Conway, Washington. Ethan was in fact a triplet, 2 boys and a girl, and he was very close with his siblings. They would play basketball together, soccer, they would run cross country, and in fact all 3 of them would go to the University of Idaho. Ethan himself was majoring in recreation, sport, and tourism management, and he was in a relationship with, finally, Xana Kernodle. Xana was 20 years of age, of Post Falls, Idaho. Born and raised in that area, she was a talented gymnast as a child, and later became a talented volleyball, track, and soccer player. She was dearly beloved, and majoring in marketing at the University of Idaho, and was a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority with Madison, and in fact they worked together part-time at a local Greek restaurant. And so that's how they all kind of came to know each other. Maddie and Kaylee, they were best friends since childhood. Xana and Maddie, they were in the same sorority together and they worked together. And Xana and Ethan were in a relationship.
God, it smells like dirty dick in here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy.
Did anybody do their chores today? Fuck, I'm just gonna do it.
Where are you going? I gotta go pull you. I failed 2 of them already.
So as you can see, all 4 victims, they came from roughly the same kind of general area, and they all had a pretty kind of similar background. And all 4 were murdered in the same house in the early morning hours of November the 13th, 2022. Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana all lived together at 1122 King Road, located on the hilly, southwesterly side of Moscow. It was a large house, 3 stories, 6-bed, 3-bath. Now, one thing that is super important to know about the house they were living in is that it was on a hill, as you can see. So you can enter from the front door, which is on the 1st floor, the ground floor, or you can enter from a sliding door on the 2nd floor at the back of the house. So Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana lived together along with 2 other students. Dylan, and Bethany. It's believed a sixth student had also lived there along with those five. Their name was still on the lease, but by November 13th, they had already moved out. So on November the 13th, there was those five people: Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, Bethany, and Dylan, along with Ethan, who, as Xana's boyfriend, presumably he would stay over often enough. There was also the dog Murphy in the house too. Bethany and Dylan, their bedroom was on the first floor, then Ethan and Xana on the second floor, and then Maddie and Kaylee on the third floor. Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee were all murdered in that house on the 13th of November. Bethany and Dylan, who were asleep on the first floor, said they did not hear a thing. So now let's get into what we know about the events of that day and that weekend. On Saturday, the 12th of November, the victims weren't all hanging around together that evening, but this picture was taken that day. It's kind of eerie, actually, because it shows everyone all together. Posted by Kaylee, the caption reads, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day. Heart." The night of, Ethan and Xana were at a fraternity party just a couple of minutes away, arriving there at approximately 8 p.m. In the meantime, at around 10 p.m, Kaylee and Maddie were picked up from their home and went to the Corner Club, a sports bar in downtown Moscow. So the night went on, all were having, a grand old time. Apparently we haven't heard anything bad that happened. Now, by 1 a.m, Bethany and Dylan, the two other roommates, they had returned home to that house on King Road. They themselves had been out that night, separately, not together. But by 1 a.m, they were home. Ethan and Xana were home then by 1:45 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie left the Corner Club at 1:30 a.m. and were then seen on a Twitch live stream, of all things if you can believe that, by a grub truck parked a couple of minutes away. They regularly live streamed their business, I guess, and both Kaylee and Maddie could be seen.
It's amusing though. It's fun to watch other people be miserable. Have a good night. Bye. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks. I think I would like the car, but not.
Okay.
I feel bad. But if I have like a free grub truck on my app.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is, well, actually.
Now, a hell of a lot has been made about this stream, for obvious reasons, right? Namely, the one being it's the last time any of them were seen on camera alive. Also, there's this kind of strange guy on it, this guy in the hoodie. A lot has been made about him too. Namely because of how he acts, especially when you consider what happened just a couple of hours later. Weird.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is.
He's dressed, covering himself up. It appeared he had been walking with them, but then he's just standing there not talking to anyone. It looks like he's staring at Kaylee and Maddie. And then he walks right up and stands beside him.
It's one, but they're like 6 to 7 ounce.
So did they know him? And if they did, why did they just ignore him? Was he some kind of weirdo? What's the deal? I mean, probably it's just the usual kind of shit women have to put up with drunk guys and that kind of stuff. But again, when you factor in what's about to happen... Anyways, the hooded guy was talking to the bearded guy. Apparently, the bearded guy told the police later, this hoodie guy, he seemed nice, and maybe he just wanted to make sure the two girls got home safe. And after Kaylee and Maddie got into a car, one of them had called an Uber or something like that, the bearded guy points and said they're leaving. Allegedly, the hooded guy said, "What the fuck?" and then he took off, absolutely booking it. I mean, it just is super odd to me that if he was trying to, make sure they got home safe, how they never interacted with him, like once over the course of the 10 minutes of this footage. Whether they knew him or not, from what we can see, it seems they didn't say word one. Now, I do have to be crystal clear here, the police do not consider this guy to be a suspect, and as you can imagine, that footage has been ripped apart by all the internet sleuths online, examining each and every pixel, I'm sure at this stage, looking through with different filters, trying to see if there's invisible people in the footage too. And so then, at 1:55 a.m, Kaylee and Maddie arrived back to that house at 1122 King Road. Between 2:26 a.m. and 2:44 a.m, Kaylee called a fella named Jack, a person she had previously dated, and Jack had been Kaylee's prom date. 6 times. Then, from 2:44 a.m. to 2:52 a.m, Maddie called him 3 times. Now, Kaylee and Maddie, as I said, they're best friends since middle school, and their bedrooms were right next to each other, and it's actually believed that that night they were in the same bed. They were both in Maddie's bed. So Kaylee, maybe she had a couple of beers or whatever, she was trying to talk to an old boyfriend named Jack, as you can get after a couple of drinks, and he wasn't picking up. Then maybe she thought, well, maybe, he's not answering for me, get Maddie to call him. He didn't pick up for her either. And then at 2:52 a.m, Kaylee called him one last time. And then that was it. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. that dark November night, a figure approached that house, slowly slid open the back door, going into that dark and quiet house, armed with an extremely sharp and deadly weapon, and savagely murdered Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana. The coroner would say they had likely all been asleep when it happened or when it started, because some did have defensive wounds. All were stabbed to death with a large knife, possibly one quite like this, and there were no signs of sexual assault. And the 2 roommates, Dylan and Bethany, who had been home before anyone else, who were on the first floor asleep, they never heard a peep while there was absolute carnage going on the 2 floors right above them. Then at around midday on the 13th of November, Bethany and Dylan, they woke up. They found Xana and Ethan on the 2nd floor. They found Kaylee and Maddie on the 3rd floor. They as you can imagine, they absolutely freaked out. One of them even fainted. They called their friends first because, as you can imagine, what's going through their head, and then the police arrived.
Don't know how this happened or anything else at this time. Moscow police say they responded to the area around noon Sunday after they had reports that someone was unconscious. When officers arrived, they found the